Hi, my name is Sandy, and I'm here with the Center for Humanistic Change. We are a nonprofit organization that offers drug and alcohol prevention along with different life skill programming for our community. Today, we're here to show you a little bit about a current program that we're offering the community called Parenting Through Crisis, a guide through learning at home. It's been very difficult for all the families to learn how to teach our children from home, but we're doing it. We're getting along. But what if I were to tell you that instead of just getting along, you could actually strive and be successful through the pandemic? Well, you can, and we're here to help you. Now, if you've ever been to any parenting programming before or a parenting class, in spite of the name, it usually doesn't talk a lot about the parents. We often talk a lot about our kids. So today I want to make sure that we take a moment to really focus on ourselves as parents and what we can be doing for ourselves that will ultimately serve our children, but really serves us too. So it is very unknown, but there is an affliction that many Americans are dealing with. And if you happen to be dealing with this current affliction, it is going to make your job right now or the current situation that's going on much more difficult. And so I'm going to list off some symptoms. And if you can identify with any of these symptoms, it might be that you are dealing with this affliction. And it's important that you know that so you can deal with it and handle it, because it might be making your situation a little more difficult. So are you dealing with fatigue or chronic tiredness, migraines, insomnia, persistent worrying, memory loss, easily irritated, lack of self-care, body aches? If you can identify with having one or more of these symptoms, I have some very bad news for you. You might be a parent. Now, I know, shocking. Not many of you were expecting that diagnosis, but that is what I'm diagnosing you with. But the good news is I do have a treatment for your little tiny problem. There is no cure, but there is a treatment. And what if I were to tell you that the pandemic has really offered parents a unique opportunity? Yes, you heard me right, an opportunity. There is a unique opportunity that the pandemic is offering us. And if we can just use it the right way, we can not only survive, but we can thrive through the pandemic, coming out the other side with a stronger and happier family. And so I'm going to help you do that for your family today. Now, before we get into talking about our kids, we have to talk about you. Yes, you. Just like when you're on an airplane and you put an oxygen mask on, they tell you to put yours on first and then help the person next to you. You will be no good to that person if you've lost oxygen before you've even been able to help them. And so this is typically what happens as parents. We invest all of our time and energy into our kids, and we forget about one of the most important things, us. And so I want to invite you to really take some time to yourself, find time alone. And I know what you're thinking. I have everybody working from home. I've got the animals and the kids, and how am I going to find time alone? I'm not saying it's easy. It is absolutely challenging, but it is a challenge worth meeting, because if you are not okay, your kids will not be okay. So meet that challenge, overcome that challenge, and really use your resources to take care of you. Another important part of this process of taking care of oneself is validating our own emotions. But what do you do if you just don't know how you feel? As parents, we're dealing with a lot of conflicting emotions right now, right? On one side, I feel so privileged and happy that I get to work from home with my kid, but I'm also at home all day working with my kid. And so you can see how emotions might get conflicting. Now, our society is very much focused on putting a name to how you feel. But what if you're someone who's challenged with that? What if you're someone who really has a difficult issue really putting a name to how you're feeling? Well, don't worry. I have a really cool sheet that I call the Feelings and Needs sheet. Now, this is something that I used to use with the little ones, but I found that it helps older people too. It helps the adults in my life, myself included. So it is a sheet of our universal human needs and values. Here below, we'll see the feelings sheet, all the different classifications. And so typically I would introduce this to younger kids who have a limited vocabulary so they can find the right word to kind of describe how they're feeling. But for the parents today, I'd like you to focus more on the top of this list. This is the needs list. If you're having a really hard time kind of putting a name to how you feel, then stop focusing on putting a name to it and start focusing on what do you need? What do you need to deal with this emotion? What do you need from your family, from your friends, and from your kids? And once you've identified exactly what it is that you need to deal with however it is you're feeling, I want you to be vocal about it. I want you to reach out to the people in your life, the people that care about you and love you, and let them know what you need to deal with this emotion. Because this information is no good to anyone if we're not giving it to other people to help us. I also want to remind you that you are not alone. Every family in this country has been affected by COVID. And regardless from what Instagram or Facebook says, this has affected every single family in America, and you are not alone. So don't go through it alone. Find friends, find communities, programs like the ones that the CHC offers, where parents can come together and understand that whatever struggles or difficulties you are going through, you don't have to go through them alone. So let's not go through it alone. And then last but not least, I know that when you get that minute to yourself, you're worrying about the kids, or you might be feeling a little bit guilty. And I want you to keep this mantra. I want you to have it posted on your computer, put it in the bathroom, wherever it needs to be, to remind you how important this is. Because if you take nothing else from today, I hope you take this. And I want you to repeat after me. The best thing that I can do for my kids is take care of myself. Let that sink in for a second. We are no good to our kids if we are not good to ourselves. And so let's find the time to be good to ourselves. And before I get into any of the things or the ideas that I have on how you can really support your children, I'm talking to parents. And so I have to touch on how important it is to have reasonable expectations. And no, not for our children, for ourselves. Oftentimes we walk into these Instagrammable moments where we think everything's going to go right. And then we beat ourselves up for not meeting an expectation that was impossible to start with. So we have to have reasonable expectations. We cannot hold ourselves to the same standard when the situation has changed. So the first step is being flexible. Be flexible with yourself, with your family, and with your current expectations for yourself and your family. Make sure our children understand and agree to these expectations. It would be great if little Johnny could just naturally know not to shove crayons up his nose. However, little Johnny might not be a big human yet, and that might be something challenging for him. And so we need to be very explicit when we talk to little Johnny about what our expectations are for his nose and for his crayons. The next thing that we can do to really help our kids is to set an example. If we want to raise young children who are emotionally developed and who are mature, then we have to kind of set an example for that by expressing our emotions, by talking about how we feel, by working together. If we can do that and set an example, our kids are going to be more likely to do it too. And we're going to talk today about some things we can do to create an effective schedule. And we're going to talk about some different steps we can take to really work with our family. And you're going to go home and you're going to build a schedule and you're going to have everything prepared. And then Monday's going to come and it's all going to fall apart. The school schedule is going to change. Little Johnny's going to get sick. Husband can't take the kids to school, and everything you had planned won't work. And it's going to happen, and it's going to happen a lot. But do not allow this to get you down. Don't just abandon the schedule because it didn't work out once or twice. This is to be expected, especially right now in the current climate. So what I want you to do instead is I want you to dust yourself off, pick yourself up, and and try again next week. Never give up. Because if you create a schedule or structure, it's meant to support your family, not create more pressure. So keep that in mind. So let's talk about some of the steps that we can take to create a good place for our kids to learn. Now, my daughter has tried to convince me time and time again how comfortable it would be for her to work from her bed. However, our brains are very interesting and our brains create associations. Our brains create an association with home as a place to relax, and they create an association with school as a place to learn. This has become confusing because now we're using our home to do both. And so we need to create very clear boundaries so that our brain doesn't get the message mixed up of what we're doing. So the first step is to get your kids out of the bed. Do not let them work from their beds. If you can, get them out of their rooms so they're not working from their rooms. I had one parent who actually put a curtain up in front of her daughter's bed to kind of create like a space that this is relaxation and this is where we're going to work. But I understand some of us are limited in space. And so if they have to work in their room, make sure they get out of their bed. And also make sure when it's time to rest, they're not sitting at their desk on their phone or watching TV. They move away from their desk and go find somewhere else to relax. This will help them create a space a learning seat, a learning place. And when their brain gets to that place, their brain knows, all right, this is when we start working. Or when their brain gets to their bed, okay, this is where we can rest. We want to keep those boundaries. That's really going to support our kids. But the bed is never going to be a good place for them to learn. The next thing you want to do is you want to stay organized. Now, while I would love for my organization to look like this, I can see how that would be unreasonable to ask of some of our younger kids who are trying to learn from home. And just because we can't attain this level of organization doesn't mean we can't attain some level of organization that will fit our families. I will give my family for an example. I wanted this, and instead my house turned into a sixth grade classroom with paper everywhere and scissors and books and calculators. And so we came to kind of a middle ground. And I said to my daughter, well, I understand that, you know, you're not going to color code the crayons and you're not going to put the books in alphabetical order. I would love that, but I understand that that's not going to happen. And so instead we bought a toy chest. And the only rule is that at the end of the day, all of her books, all of her belongings, everything that she needs gets put into that toy chest. And so when tomorrow she needs to go look for it, we already know where everything is. We don't have to go looking all over the house for it. It's in that chest. And that is our version of organization. So make organization work not only for you, but for your kids. And remember to have reasonable expectations. And this is the biggest no-no when our kids are trying to learn from home. Do not allow them to have their phones while they're learning from home. They're going to try to convince you that it helps, that there's some app or a calculator. And you remind them that there's also a calculator, an actual calculator. They might be surprised, but remind them that they're actual calculators. They do not need their phones. There is a reason why they're not allowed their phones in school. Cell phones are extremely bad. They distract our kids so much. Matter of fact, as an adult, I'm sure you can relate. You've been sitting at your desk. You see that Instagram notification. You really want to look. Phones are just distracting and they're not going to help your kids in their learning process. So put the phone away. If your kid needs to take a break during the day, totally understandable. Find something else. Painting, drawing, even if it's watching TV on the actual TV, going outside for a walk, anything other than the phone. The phone just distracts way too much and there's too much time to lose on a phone. So do not give them their phones. Take the phone away. It's really not going to help them learn. Let's talk about establishing routines. So typically when I tell parents about routines, they're thinking about a very clear schedule that says like at 9 o'clock we do this, at 8 o'clock we do that. But it's actually not necessary. We need to establish routines for our kids because it's going to give them some structure, which is really important right now when lots of things are changing. Our kids might feel a little unsettled. So routine will help them feel more secure. Now they're going to battle you tooth and nail, but understand at the end of the day, this is really going to benefit them. And so what studies have shown is that our kids really only need to do 4 things. 4 things consistently every day before they're getting ready to learn. This will give the brain the notification that it needs to wake up, get ready, because we're about to learn. And these 4 things can be anything: getting up at the same time, washing your face, brushing your teeth, brushing your hair, eating breakfast, anything. Just 4 things that they consistently do every morning to let their brain know it is time to learn. And when we create a routine for our kids, we want to make sure we don't forget about important things like lunchtime or snack time. If we don't prepare times throughout the day where our kids are going to eat, they're going to end up snacking. And they're not going to snack on bananas and oranges. They're going to snack on junk food. And the brain needs nutrition to be smart and to work. And so we want to make sure we're scheduling in lunchtime so we can be purposeful about the times that we're eating and so that we don't forget to eat, because that happens too. And that's also just not healthy for our brains. In that schedule, we want to add more important things like playtime. Your child's imagination is so important for them. So make sure they're having time for breaks, for playtime, for doing things that they enjoy, and it's not just all work and no fun. And then the most important part of this routine, there has to be a time when school is over. I don't want your kids working until 8 o'clock at night. If their school ends at 3 o'clock, then they need to end at 3 o'clock. They shouldn't be on school all day. That's not good for their brain. They also need to rest. So at some point, the computer gets shut down, the stuff gets put away, and they go into relaxation mode, and now they're home with the family. But no matter what your schedule or your routine looks like, these are the 3 things that a routine or a schedule is going to need in order to work. The first thing is that routine. Find 4 things that your kid can do before they start their school day to wake the brain up and let the brain know it is time to learn. Number 2, that schedule should always be on display. The more your child knows what to expect for the next day, the more successful they will be. The moment they walk into school, they know exactly what to suspect. And that structure is so important for them. And so instead of them having to wake up and ask mom and dad what to do, if we have a schedule on display, then they can refer to the schedule and figure out what it is that they need to do for the day. This is how we promote an independent problem solver, which is another key factor to having our kids be successful through the pandemic. And then last but not least, make sure that everyone is participating in creating that schedule. Make sure that your kids have choices and they can choose between what time or what chores they will do. The more ownership your child feels over that schedule, the more likely they are to comply. So make sure that everyone joins in, even the dog and the cat. Everybody come together, family meeting. Let's work on this schedule together. Here are some ways that we can support our kids. Now, I say that through the pandemic, one of the best things that we can do for our children is really teach them how to be independent problem solvers. This is something that will help them be successful for the rest of their lives, but especially through the pandemic. However, we don't want to forget how important our support is. So here's how we can support our kids, but also promoting them to kind of be independent and take ownership over their own work. We can do things like daily check-ins. Daily check-ins is just a way to get our kids to start thinking about their day and planning for their day with saying things like, how will you spend your time? What resources do you need? What do you need from me? How can I help? These are ways we can try to get our kids, their brains to start spinning and thinking about the day and planning ahead. And then we can close out the night by doing a nightly check-in. The nightly check-in is more for a reflective thing. So they don't just go through their day and not think about it. At the end of the day, have them reflect on their day. How did it go? What challenges did you have? What could we do better the next day? These are all really great ways to get our kids to really be thinking about and being purposeful with their actions. And how can we help? Well, there's tons of ways we can help our kids, but here are some of the main ways we can do that in a productive way. Number one, only help with homework when you have the time. Now, I know 90% of the time you are exhausted and tired and trying to do 12 things at once, but you need to take time for that 10% where you're not to really sit down and work on schoolwork with them. If you are attempting to do schoolwork when you are exhausted and tired and trying to do other things, you're more than likely going to get overwhelmed and the experience is not going to be positive for your child. And we don't want to create any kind of friction in your relationship with them and helping them with school, because it'll be harder for them to trust you. And so find a time, schedule a time where you can sit down with them and go over their homework. If you have older kids are always going to try to show their independence and they're really going to want to work on things on their own. So before chiming in, ask if it's okay for you to help. They will appreciate this. Number three, do not be shy to get the teachers involved. Teachers are here to help you. If it is a fundamental issue your child's having with that material or that subject, and it's not a matter of just practice, but of understanding the fundamentals of that subject, it's time to get the teacher involved and see how she can help or guide us towards someone that can. And this is the most important part. This is something, if your child can learn how to do this, will set them up for success for their life. Remember that mom and dad aren't the only one with answers. Remind your children constantly that they have tons of resources at their fingertips. They don't just have mom and dad, they have grandma, grandpa, older siblings, younger siblings, cousins, uncles, Google, Alexa, everybody. There's all these different resources, faculty, staff, classmates. They have all of these resources. And if you can really teach your kids how to exhaust those resources, it is going to help them feel more confident, but also not exhaust mom and dad with questions. And so remind them that you're not the only ones with the answers. There's other people out there that can help. Now, this is the one that all the parents want to know about, and I'll be forwarding these resources. Managing screen time. How the heck do we manage screen time when all our kids do is screen time? There actually is a way, though. So there's a couple of ways of going about this. The first one is the Mayo Clinic way. So they suggest different screen times based on your child's developmental stage. So basically, depending on their age, how long should they be on their phones? However, I think that the article offered by Psychology Today is a little more relevant for our time. Psychology Today will explain to you how each different screen time affects our kids. So how does laptop time, how does cell phone and TV and video games, how do all these screen times affect our children? And based on what you learn, you can make a well-rounded, educated estimate of how long you think your kids should be on their laptop or cell phone or whatever. But if all else fails, if you read these two articles and you're still very confused about how much time your kids should actually be spending on screen, here are 3 sure signs that it is time to disconnect. The first one is irritation. If you have a pretty easygoing kid who doesn't really talk back, they're pretty, easy, and all of a sudden they're spending a lot of time on their phone. And when you ask them to do something, you're getting back talk, you're getting, they're not being very cooperative. This could be a sign that they're overstimulated by their phone. And guess what, adults? This happens to us too. And the best way to get our kids off of their phone, you could just say, hey, get off your phone. You don't talk to me like that. Or we could redirect their attention. Hey, you've been on that phone for quite a bit. Why don't you come over here and help me with this? Why don't we go for a walk? Why don't we play a video game together? Let's go play some cards. Let's motivate them to get off their phone. Warning though, warning, if you really want this to work, it's important that you do some self-awareness checks. Make sure that you're not getting irritated by your phone or spending too much time on it, and invite your children to kind of notify you if they see that maybe you're getting irritated by your phone or you're spending too much on your phone. Make it a comfortable environment where it's normal to check one another when we need it. The second sign is withdrawal. If they're not interested in doing family games, they don't want to eat with the family, they don't want to spend time with their friends online, they're not interested in doing the things that they typically would, this is a sign that they're spending too much time on the screen. So it's time to check out. And of course, the last one is trouble sleeping. Do not let your kids have their phones in their rooms when they're going to bed at night. It's just not going to end well. And if I don't want to overstep any boundaries, but also for adults, this isn't good either. So make sure you're checking that too. You might not want to have your cell phone in your room when you're sleeping, and your kids, they definitely should not. It's going to stop them from sleeping. And then lastly, before I leave you guys today, I want to talk about that opportunity that I mentioned. So the pandemic has given us a very interesting opportunity. And I know you're thinking, opportunity, really? Yes. So there is something called risk versus protective factors. So these are all the risks that put our children at, make them more vulnerable to having a substance misuse disorder with either drugs or alcohol. And this can be many factors. The ones listed in red are the main factors that might put our kids in a vulnerable position, and they might find themselves dealing with a substance misuse disorder. But the protective factors are actual active steps that we can take as parents and as the community and as school to really help our kids and to protect them from becoming addicted to drugs or alcohol or other substances. And I want to point out the opportunity that COVID has given us as families. So the 3 things you see here are the most influential things in your child's life: their community, their family, and their school. Now, because of COVID, the ties or the attachment that your child has with the community has been weakened. It's not disconnected completely, but it has been weakened. And this could be really affecting your child if they are someone who really identifies with the community, if they're involved in groups or friends throughout the neighborhood. And this can really affect them. But there's another side to that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's look at the school side. While our children are still in school, a lot of what our children go through at school will really define a part of their personality as they get older. The interactions they have with their education, with classmates, faculty, teachers, is going to be a huge part of forming them as a person. But unfortunately, their school ties have also been weakened. They're not seeing their teachers every day. They're not seeing classmates. I know a lot of kids are having problems with signing on and being consistent. And so that has also been weakened. And again, if your child identifies with the school and being a part of the school, and maybe they're in chorus or they're in different groups or sports, this can be really hard for them because they've kind of lost that connection with the school. But let me know which one's standing, which one do they still have connection with? When the rest of the world has lost connection or has a weakened connection, family is still here. And that is the message that your child is getting. And when other ties weaken, 2 things can happen. 1, those ties can break, or 2, the ties left over can really be strengthened. The things we talked about today, those small steps that we can take to support our kids, are protective factors, are things that we can do to protect our children, not just today from the pandemic, but from today until forever. But if we don't take advantage of this opportunity, if we don't strengthen our families, then we might find our kids in the risk factor side of things, where they might feel left out or alone. And so I really want us to take advantage of these factors because they're going to strengthen our family ties. You see, because 10 years from now, when they ask us adults about the pandemic, we're going to talk about job losses and being sick and losing money and the horrible things that have happened to us over the last year. But that's not what your kids are going to talk about. They're going to talk about the fun times getting to work with mom and dad at home. They're going to talk about getting to go to school in their pajamas every day, or getting to eat breakfast while they listen to their teacher talk, or getting to do schoolwork while the cat or the dog sits next to them, or not having to wake up early because they didn't have to get to actual physical school. They're going to remember the wacky and silly ways that their teachers have come up with, these creative ways to engage them, or maybe the silly or out of the box ways mom and dad have really worked hard to kind of keep them engaged with school. That's what your children will remember. And it is truly up to us as parents what they remember. And so I want you to take advantage of this opportunity. By having family meetings and allowing your kids to actively participate in the decisions that your family makes, there you go, your family harmony and stability. By sitting down with your child, putting times in their calendar where you're going to do their homework and help them with their homework, supportive parenting, that's super supportive. Strong family values. When we sit down for those meetings, we're really hardening with our kids what our family values are, what's important to us as a family. And the list goes on, but if you look at that last one, that support for education, that's super important to your kids. And when your kids move on from COVID and life goes back to normal, what will never change is the fact that your child will recognize that in the middle of a pandemic, a global pandemic, you were there for them. You supported them. You accepted and loved them and saw them through a very difficult time. And that is not easily forgotten. So please take advantage of the situation that you're in right now to really hold your families close and strengthen those bonds, because we could be protecting and setting our kids up for success for a very much longer time than COVID will ever last. That's all I have for you today, but I want to leave you with one last thought. I know that parenting is very, very difficult, and I know that it can be hard, but I want you to know you're doing a great job. Even if it's not a perfect job, I know the clothes aren't washed and the floor hasn't been swept in a little while, but have you shown up for your kids? Because if you have, even if it's not in the way that you had dreamed, they notice that, and that's exactly what they need during a global pandemic. I want to thank each and every one of you so much for joining me today. If you're interested in more of our programming, this program's actually a little bit longer. And if you wanted to hear the full program, I have tons of more ideas and ways we can set up a positive learning setting for our kids. You can contact me at the email address you see up there and sign up for one of our programs. You can join us. We have different parenting groups that meet up and talk about solutions for the current situation. We have programs that we offer the kids to help them kind of deal with the stressors and different things that's going on right now in their lives. And we would love to support you and your family through this pandemic. We're all in it together, so let's not go through it alone. Thank you so much for your time today, and I wish you and your family the best. Goodbye.